The only other item I can say is, well, we saw a 15-2 vote on the supplemental budget, and what it reflects is politically expediency. That's what it reflects. And we're going to have that same issue this coming year because we're in an election. If it was 15-2 to make sure that the towns and the cities are happy, it'll be 15-2 when they're looking at the real numbers that are going to be in effect when the election comes up. I don't believe for a moment that this General Assembly is going to have the courage to say no more vehicle money going to the
Jay,
never happen.
Jay, I only have one issue, and I think it's the same issue I've been raising all along. If you don't have an idea of what the number is that you possibly could put a levy on, I don't want to see us in a situation where a vote of the financial town meeting exceeds the recommendation of the budget committee and possibly goes over a number that we could exceed by the same, because I don't want to see us in that situation that we ran into some years ago when a calculation was a mistake. And the courts basically said that if it was appropriated, you had to come up with the money for them. And the state may say you're not entitled to generate it through the levy on taxes, and there has to be another way to generate it. I've been stating this fear of mine because I've lived through that, or through a period of time when we faced that, and what that possibility was. And it still rings so clear in my mind of how a judge said to somebody who was sitting before them, I don't care how you raise it. Have a bake sale. Yes. You know, it was basically that kind of an attitude that puts, you know, this group and the town at serious risk. If you at least have a number that says, should this happen, here is what it is, because the revenue number, I agree with you. This is one of the reasons why we had asked the state to allow us to postpone the financial town meeting. Because if you give me that information, if you vote on next year's budget before I have my financial town meeting, I have a concrete number to take to somebody and say, here's what's going to happen. You're dangling something out there. They cut the fourth quarter payment in half. So politically expedient, they didn't take it all from you because you were already into this. You know, the argument they may be making when they're having their meeting in June or July is, you had an opportunity, we kind of told you what was going on, so, you know, if you don't get it, it isn't like we took it away from you after you voted. And I'm not so sure the political expediency is going to prevail.
The other thing is, you've talked about Jim, our administrator, preparing a budget, which I guess would supersede the budget committee. We would argue that it supersedes, which gives me a little pause under the charter, but the school committee could do the same, couldn't they not? And
that's one of my points, that we're going before the Department of Revenue and saying we're presenting a counter proposal to the budget committee. We're going to do it on behalf of the municipal side, and essentially to heck with the school committee.
First thing is, I think we're talking two things, and I guess maybe we got to get something straight, because my understanding is that we can ask them for a ruling without asking them for a certification, or asking them for a number that's not saying we wish to certify a number above the cap. I don't think we're asking for a certification. Now, Peter Schaefer says you can ask for that number or present something then, because I think if the financial town meeting takes a vote and it exceeds, then we have to ask for certification of an amount.
Well, can I just clarify that a little bit? Because I think what he said was that you could ask for the eligibility. To what extent is the town eligible to exceed the cap based upon a loss of revenue, whether it's car tax, etc., and indicated that that would be a strong possibility. But the regulations talk about a total loss of revenue. So they would probably issue a letter which would say that based upon these facts, and believe me, they'll scrub them, that you would be entitled to exceed the cap by X. And we would disclose we're going into a financial town meeting, there is great uncertainty, blah, blah, blah.
And I think I'm going to make this my last comment. I don't want to take up all of it.
You promise?
I promise. But I can come up with the number. Here is the number that would have to be certified based on the language in the statute for certification. What did you receive in the last financial year, fiscal year, in the motor vehicle tax?
1.4. But
Now, your assumption is you will now receive 0. Underline, what's the difference between 1,400 and whatever?
no, but that's not the
1.4?
way they calculate it.
Well, but that's the base number that they use.
Uh,
We already have a rough idea as to how much revenue we've lost. If we're assuming that we're not going to get the motor vehicle tax, we've lost $1.4 million.
Jay, I would like to think that, but that is not the way they calculate it. They talk about the total loss. You look at the regs, it's the total loss. I don't know what it is, but it may not, it clearly may not be 1.4. I know that when Peter Schaefer spoke, it was, based upon a 1.4, but they will look at the total picture of the town. And so it's not as easy as just pointing to 1.4. I mean, I'd like to
Mr.
think.
President.
That clearly is the language of the statute.
You broke your promise.
You're absolutely right. That's it.
What I'd like to say is, I think a lot of the problems that you see, Jay, are not worthy of all the considerations you give them. Number two is, I think the people in this town do not want to see an increase in taxes. However, if it becomes necessary in their opinion, the tools should be in place to do so. What I think some people think is that if we mention the fact that there's a reasonable possibility for an override, that they're going to grab it. They don't want it. They want to keep their taxes as low as possible. I think that what we're doing is going in with an inquiry for information, and I think any number we use, knowing how the American bureaucratic process works, would be subject to change to meet changes that were considered, or changes to the numbers that were considered for requesting the information. So I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill here, and my position is that we should go and with the letter of inquiry, and that the rights of the people at the financial town meeting be preserved. This is a democracy. We should not deny them that right. And I think what you're proposing is that if we give them an idea that they can do this, they'll grasp it. I don't agree with that. And so I will make a motion that we proceed with this letter of inquiry.
Mr. President, excuse me, bear with my scratchy vote. I've been talking all day, not about town business, but it seems to me that we really cast the die at our last meeting when we voted to go with a revised budget. In other words, the budget committee came and recommended certain cuts to the municipal budget. We then, with Mr. Gonzo's input, came up with a municipal budget greater than what the budget committee recommended. I think once we approved that greater amount, we, as several people pointed out last meeting, we did indeed then propose that we would go over the cap. So if we are, with our current budget that we're doing here, taking the budget in total, are going to exceed what is allowable under the cap. It seems only prudent then to go ask in advance what sort of eligibility we can have. Now I happen to share Mr. Costa's view. I don't think we're going to be faced with a whole lot of people at the financial town meeting that are absolutely eager to increase their taxes any more than they have to. I think there may be some particular things they want to do differently than what we might think, but I don't see a groundswell where people are just really out there anxious to increase the taxes.